Okay, I'd like to call the special council meeting for August the 15th, 2022, 5 o'clock. If everyone will stand for the pledge of allegiance, remain standing for the invocation. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather and conduct the business of our city. We ask for your guidance in what we do tonight that is pleasing in your eyes for the betterment of our community. We ask you to remember the Bowden family during this time. We ask you to look after our first responders, our troops, and our citizens. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hill?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Jefferson?
Here.
Mayor Witt?
Here.
Mr. Dow?
Here.
Mr. Coverline?
Here.
Chief Butler?
Here. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lake City Council has opened this public meeting. Since 1968, the city code has prohibited any person from making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becoming boisterous while addressing the council. Yelling or making audible comments from the audience constitutes boisterous conduct. Such conduct will not be tolerated. There is only one approved manner of addressing the city council, that is to be recognized and speak from the podium. As a reminder, persons are not to openly carry a handgun or carry a concealed weapon or firearm while the governing body is meeting. Approval of the agenda.
So move, Mayor. Second.
Motion second to approve the agenda published. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comments, I don't have anybody signed up to speak at this time. New business, interview possible action, city attorney, Foles, Walker, Robinson, Kennan.
Mr. Mayor, good to be back again, and Todd and I are happy to answer any questions you may have or present. I think a couple of things that we have been talking about since the last time we met is how do we manage it for the betterment of the city? So your city clerk, your manager, that it's coordinated and well handled as far as your day-to-day needs. How do we manage that? What do we do and how do we do it? And in my view, and in talking with Todd, you have to have somebody that is responsible at the helm. And God willing, we're hiring, we've got a lady that has been working with us for 3 years as a file clerk. She was our law clerk for another 3 years, and she's got a great work ethic. I'm hoping to get her up here to meet you all in the very near future. But Danielle is taking her bar exam end of July. She'll know in mid-September if she's passed. And God willing, I sure hope she does, because we can use the help. But her responsibility will be to field any calls from your manager, your clerk, your other staff that may call in. And then secondarily, to get it on, what we do is an Excel spreadsheet that gets populated to Todd and his staff. I know Mary, his legal assistant, very well. She's very, very capable. And then my legal assistant that works on city matters is Molly. And her responsibility is to get the assigned tasks onto the Excel spreadsheet so that the city can see it, Todd can see it, we can see it, and then somebody is responsible for that. Now, there may be an item or a task that Danielle can't handle, and that may go to Todd. Maybe there's somebody in his law firm that is better suited for that task. He has board-certified civil trial lawyers that do a very good job on the defense side of things. So if the city has that need, I suspect he'll bring in one of his partners associated with that. Todd's doing eminent domain work. Todd does some dirt law, as we call it, or property law. And so he's got an expertise in that sort of thing. I have expertise of representing cities for my entire legal career of now real close to 40 years. And so I think I have some talents in this area as well. So the whole game plan is to delineate the responsibility for certain tasks, but overall, Danielle is going to have the responsibility of making sure that day-to-day things are taken care of. And if she can't answer an item, or you'll have some need, then the plan will be to get it on the calendar for Todd and myself to talk about. Todd will respond or I'll respond, and that's how we do it. Now, one of my cities has what I think is a very good process, which is they send us a work order and they say, we need an ordinance for our CRA or something along those lines. We need a new water and sewer rates. And so that goes into the task sheet, and Danielle gets a water and a sewer ordinance together and change the ordinance for the budget, and we get it done. If for whatever reason that she can't do it, then Todd and I will figure out how to get it knocked out and get it done. But the communication with the manager's office to make sure that it's getting done is the plan. That's a way that we can get this done. I think we can tackle it. When the email comes in, it is populated to Todd's office. Mary will get it, Todd will get it, I'll get it, Danielle will get it. Molly, who is our legal assistant that handles the city work, will also get it. And then it gets on the work order or the task sheet, the Excel spreadsheet. And from what I understand, that's a very similar process to what your current Fred Coberline's office, it's very similar to what they're doing on how they handle it right now. So it's a wheel that's already been invented, and we don't need to invent a new one. We just need to process it and operate it and do it in an efficient manner. That is our game plan. I think, Mr. Mayor, I spoke to you that this is not Todd and my first run on doing something in a joint venture. In the law, many times you combine with another law firm and you have essentially a joint venture between those two law firms. You take advantage of the other person's strengths and they take advantage of your strengths, and you have to do the same thing. You sit down and say, Todd, you talk to this witness, Scott, you talk to this witness, and get things prepared. We all come together, and then we execute on what our plan is. And speaking with Todd today, at a minimum, we're going, his office and my office, his team and our team will be talking about some spreadsheets coming up on the meetings. Day before the meeting, we'll be talking, hopefully we'll be prepared for that meeting and be talking about the meetings to come. So that's the following meetings will be what we're really anticipated to be preparing for. But in the event we need to talk about the meeting coming up the next day, then we'll do that as well. So that's basically our game plan and how we intend to handle it. And in the event your manager says, hey, you got to tweak it, you got to do it in a different way, or you for whatever reason it's not meeting your needs, then I hope we'll be the first to know that, and we will in fact tweak it to the extent that we need to do so.
We'll also plan on, especially with my offices, I would want to populate my phone with critical phone numbers, manager, clerk, probably HR, if they so desire, the police department, because I know there'll be times where a situation occurs that needs to be handled right then because they become a controversy if they drag out. And so being 2 or 3 blocks down the road, when you need instant coverage to take care of or deal with or discuss a problem before it gets any bigger, we'll be ready to go, and I'll be 24/7 access and that. Just got to put a name to a number to make sure I answer the phone.
And I'm one of those lawyers that on my cards has my cell phone. I feel like practicing law now in 2022, people expect to be able to get a hold of you. I may not always be able to pick up. Todd's a trial lawyer and I'm a trial lawyer, so sometimes when depositions or trials, that kind of thing, may not be able to pick up. But I don't mind folks calling my cell phone and trying to figure something out. I'll give you an example, Mr. Mayor. we've got one of my cities right now, we've got a problem between the fire chief and the HR director. And they're just having a difficult time working together at this stage. So I'm gonna go over there and sit down and try to work it out. And I think that's part of being the city attorney, is to say, okay, let's figure out what's causing this situation, and let's try to work together for the better of the city. You know, these issues need to be resolved, because there's bigger issues that run in a fire department and the human resources department of the city. That's something that we have to do. I guess, Mr. Mayor, I know you're an attorney. When you boil an attorney's job down, the very, very base level of the job, you're a problem solver. And hopefully you avoid court. That's the objective. That's when things have gotten to the point that we need a third party to come in and bang a gavel and say, we're going to do it this way. Hopefully we avoid that sort of thing.
Well, man,
Go ahead.
this is the city's first time going with two attorneys, and my concern is, you know, you saying that we can contact either or, but if push comes short, we need to talk to maybe you. Then we get you. I mean, could you explain that?
Well, between Todd and I, our assignment is to Danielle. And in my office, every time I sign a case up, I have an associate attorney that works the case with me. And probably 80% of the things, maybe a higher percentage of that, 80% of the questions that my clients ask can be answered by the associate attorney. And so there's that level of what happens now. What happens if you can't do that? What if your question is such that you need Todd's response to it, or you need my response to it? Then we're available to you in order to answer that. Now, if I'm unable to answer it, and I think the likelihood would be if it's something that you're calling about, and I very likely will call Todd and say, Todd, here's the question that's come about, and then I will follow up with a return phone call. Maybe both of us will call. That would be the game.
And the council can take the pick. You'll have both phone numbers. If you think it's something that needs to be handled quickly from 2 or 3 blocks down, you give me a phone. And when a project is assigned, then you'll know exactly who is handling that project, so you know who to deal with. But don't be confused. You're not going to be working with 20 different attorneys. That's not what we envisioned. It would be Scott and I, and then we would have, if I needed local coverage quickly, probably would be Rachel Ponte in my office, and then Danielle in his office. So theoretically, probably at the most, you're going to be dealing with 4 attorneys. The 2 of us will be the primary and will be available to council and staff as needed all the time.
Now, if, Mr. Hill, if you called our office and it was a real estate matter, we have an individual that does almost nothing but transactional real estate work. And it would be highly probable that I would say, let me see if I can go get Clay right now to get on the line, or let's us get together and talk to Clay Martin, who is the real estate transactional lawyer that does real estate closings and that sort of thing. Todd has expertise in real estate matters as well. So it would really depend on the call that comes in. If it's an HR related claim, I have background knowledge in that area. Kirsten Ballou in our office also has a great deal of expertise in that sort of arena. The likelihood is I'm going to bring Kirsten into that issue. We're going to pull out the personnel policies and make sure what we're looking at is the proper rule. But I think maybe the best way to look at it is that you have a lot of players on the team. You have a couple of starters, and then you have a deep bench of personnel behind it that can can come in and lend their expertise for whatever that situation might be.
Well,
Todd, would you be the one that primarily comes to the meetings?
I think what we've talked about is that we may cover jointly, at least at the beginning stages of this, to kind of get a feel for. One of the things my partner said is every city is different. Every city has its own personality. And you need to understand what that personality is. And so I think the initial stages, unless we have a conflict, would be Todd and I attending the meetings. As we go on down the line, it's likely he'll cover one or I'll cover one.
Right.
And kind of alternate the meetings to keep up with it. Now, if Todd's got some project that he's been working on and it's my turn to be there, but Todd's been working it up, Todd's likely to be the one that'll, or vice versa, or I'll be the one that'll likely be with you at that time.
And then I'm available for specially called meetings, if there are emergency meetings, et cetera. You know, it'd probably be me because I'm not an hour drive away, so you have that local coverage. If you do have an emergency type meeting, I'll be there probably.
Jake, you didn't finish.
yeah, well, and you saying this council here has a face of having someone sit in that seat. We're not talking no, what you call it, via online,
Zoom.
Zoom. We want you here. That's another one of my concerns is that seat being filled.
It will be filled for every meeting.
The first Zoom meeting I attended for City Commission was because I was down at the Florida Municipal Attorneys Convention down in Bonita Springs, and High Springs was meeting that night, and they allowed me to, I called the city manager actually a couple of weeks ahead and said, look, I'm gonna be at the FMAA conference, because that's the go-to conference for city attorneys. There's a social part of it, but there's also a lot of the program that you get is associated with that particular conference. And in fact, our whole city attorney team was down there for the conference. It wasn't just me. But I attended their meeting via Zoom for that meeting. But otherwise, I'm kind of like you're saying, old school. I like to be there in person.
Well, that's understandable. You know, we have things to come up, but at the end of the day, we like to have somebody sit in that seat. Well, at least I would anyway.
And we agree with that 100%.
So I have.
Okay, anybody else have any? Oh, you
Well,
had-
under this, I want to say under the umbrella, but so that I can get a clear feel of the accountability issue, who is accountable to the city? And what I would not like to see that the city get confused in terms of should I call you or should I call you, you know, when we need to be here. And who's accountable to us, because well, at least me, myself, I need to have a clear picture of accountability, because our charter basically says that the council will appoint a city attorney. And so, to me, it need to be clear, you know, to the council, I think, who is accountable, who we're accountable to, and who's accountable to us.
The Scott and I, on behalf of our firms, would be the accountability. And understand that a lot of the communication issues and all, those definitely would have to be ironed out with Mr. Dial and his office. We're proposing sort of a framework for that. That all has to be addressed, and they have to be, most important, they have to be comfortable with how they want to access us.
Oh, did you have any questions about the
Yeah.
agenda?
As soon
I
as
have a
he.
question. So, also the clerk I know is heavily involved with the, city attorney. Would there be some way to set up like a single point of contact on your end, like a single email that can be emailed? And then where it goes from there, I'm not as concerned as long as it gets done, but, if there's just one point of contact, I think, then y'all determine who it goes to, because, I mean, there's so many specialists, we don't know who the specialists are. Some things Mary can handle, or whoever in your office, so I think that would be helpful to have that. And then I liked what you talked about, the work order, have the work order come over so it specifies what's going on. The only other thing I noticed was in like the general services under the tab 4 for the fee proposal, it talked about, the mayor requesting resolutions and ordinances. I don't think that's the way our charter does it, so I think normally it's the council that does that. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. We're going to follow the charter pretty much on that. Also, I noticed you mentioned attendance at other meetings as well, like planning and zoning and enforcement preservation and adjustments. I believe they have their own attorney for those departments.
And that was put in there to indicate availability if the city needed representation for whatever reason at other meetings other than the regular or special call council meetings.
Perfect.
That we would be available to handle any coverage the city needed. If you just wanted somebody there to make sure, report back what happened, whatever, we would be available for those types of meetings.
Okay, makes sense.
So on the email question that you asked, we already do that for a couple of the cities that we have. So the email comes in, it's Newberry at Folds Walker, and it populates automatically to 3 attorneys, and it also populates to staff members. So it goes to law clerk, Molly, myself, Clay, and Kirsten. So there's an automatic population, and I think it would be very easy for our IT department to do the same thing, so that you're emailing one site and it populates out to Todd's office and our office. And what I anticipate is that Danielle would see that work order. Lake City needs a water and sewer update on their fees for the ordinance. It's not the most complicated ordinance, but there's some things that need to be put into that to make sure that it's done. Danielle would do that. Todd and I would meet with Danielle and whoever from his office that he wants to bring into that meeting, say, okay, this is a good Zoom technology. You meet on Zoom, say, okay, here's the list of work orders. Danielle, do you have the water and sewer ordinance prepared? Is it done? All right, let's get it out to the city, and it's good to go. So it's that kind of level of what it is that we do. Now, those are kind of the mundane tasks of being an attorney, a city attorney. There's a lot of things that come up, as Todd just mentioned, in the police department, fire department, other things that happen, and
Yeah, like frivolous federal lawsuits, things like that that just pop up from time to time.
got one right now that's not a frivolous lawsuit in one of my cities, unfortunately. And we're going to sit down with the other side in the next couple of weeks. I'm a member of the Northern District, Middle District, 11th Circuit, and all the federal courts, of course, all the state courts as well. So if you have something like that come up, his firm is equipped to handle that sort of thing. I'm equipped to handle that kind of work as well. My partner's a member of the Northern District as well. So we can handle a lot of things that come down the pipe. We're able to handle those things. And if there's a problem out there, in my view of it, your manager needs to know what that problem is. In this case that I've got right now, we've got a problem, and we need to resolve it. The longer it goes on, the more the attorney's fees are on both sides. And in this case, the city is going to have to pay some of the costs associated with litigation, because we just did something that was not keeping the federal law. So I would rather know that as quickly as we can on the front side and resolve something as quickly as possible. Your mayor and I were talking, Todd, about relations with the local bar. I practice in the 3rd Circuit, 8th Circuit, and in the Federal Circuit. We know who the attorneys are that are in federal court and state court, that sort of thing. I make a very good practice of having relationships with other lawyers. Todd does the same thing. And I believe that you can solve something when you talk to someone. If that other person doesn't want you to pick the phone because you've been abrasive to them or whatever, that's just not the way I've been brought up. So, at all.
I had a few questions, if you don't mind. You had mentioned that one of the two of you will be available at our meetings. Currently, do you have any city meetings that already conflict with our first and third Monday night meetings where someone can't be here out of the two of you?
I do not.
Remarkably, I'm on the second, fourth, and on Mondays, and then almost every other day of the week.
Okay.
See if we go, but I do not on the first.
We also have committee meetings. They're kind of at a standstill right now until we get some things worked out. But we have, the second Tuesday of the month, we have a beautification committee meeting at 4 p.m. typically. Then we have a CRAC meeting the second Tuesday of the month at 5:30. The third Wednesday of the month, we have a utility advisory committee meeting. So we just want to make sure that you're aware that those are meetings that typically the attorney would attend as well.
Before we got here, I told Crystal in my office and Molly, get the first and third meetings on the schedule.
Right.
And then interact with your office to get the other meetings, and then get that information in there as soon as possible. You know, maybe that's putting the cart before the horse, to put it up, but we need to get it on the calendar, the sooner the better. That's what so.
When you make reference to projects, are you talking mainly about agenda items? Because there are many times that I reach out to Fred's office and I need to talk to Fred. I don't need to talk to his staff. I need to talk to Fred. And it's something that's urgent and that we need an answer on then. So is the projects, when we're emailing your office about projects, is that mainly for agenda items? And not necessarily when I really need to speak to one of you, I can pick up the phone and I can call you.
You'll have Mary's number, which is my paralegal.
Mhm.
She will be carving out time, this works out to handle just city matters. But she's there 8 to 5, you call her. If I'm not sitting there ready to go, she will make sure if Scott's not available, somebody in my office or his office will be on the phone with you to answer that question. Because I understand.
Yeah.
When I was representing White Springs, there were things that came up.
Yeah, things happen.
You know, the night before the meeting or the afternoon before the meeting, we needed to have it resolved before the meeting.
Right.
So we didn't have a disaster of a meeting. And sometimes those things just have to be done.
And we also have times that the council members have concerns that they want to float past the attorney before a meeting, or they have some questions or concerns, and they need to be able to pick up the phone and not talk to Danielle or Mary. They're gonna need to speak to you guys.
And they'll all have my cell phone.
Okay.
So that's my availability.
Yeah.
As long as I know it's Mr. Hill, I'm gonna answer the phone.
Right.
Well, Mr. Hill probably won't be calling because I try to stay away from the operations of the city, personal reason. But all my calls will be coming to our city manager.
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples. HR director in Newberry had a very hot item that she needed some response to. And as Todd just said, the cell phone is such a useful tool for HR. So I'm on my way to depositions up in Dixie County. And, you know, but I have an hour drive time to get there from my house. And so I spent the first half hour of that talking to the HR director on something and straightening out what needed to be done as far as that goes. I had another commissioner call me in High Springs last Thursday, and I talked to him about an ordinance that was coming on the agenda for that night. And he wanted to ask some points. I've had commissioners call and say, I don't know if this is a conflict of interest, but let me give you a heads up of what this is. And that is so helpful when you're not at an actual meeting, because you can flesh out a little bit more heavily what that is on a cell phone call, as opposed to sitting on the dais and trying to come up with something right there. So those are some recent examples of Yeah, exactly right. My cell phone's populated to you, your staff,
Right.
and if you need to call me or any of the commissioners, and there needs called, then that's part of the process.
Fred has us very spoiled. He's very available and very easy to reach, so it's going to be a transition for all of us, I can assure you.
Well, we can work 23 hours a day.
Yeah. I do have just a couple more things. So we are also working, we have a project that we really need to get completed, and we've been talking about it and trying to get it done. But we have a recodification that we need to do with our municipal code, a total rewrite of our code. So who would be the attorney that would take lead on something like that project with my office and the manager's office?
Well, we would sit down and work
Okay.
that out. Now, there's some things that probably would lend itself to my history and expertise. There's some parts of that probably could be handled by Danielle. And if it takes us sitting down and going through it with Danielle present, Todd wants to take this section of it, I'll take this section. The key is that, I think the question that was asked earlier by Councilmember Jefferson, who's taking accountability?
Who's the
Accountability.
Yes.
And I think that's, and again, Mr. Mayor, we kind of talked about that a little bit. In litigation, it's the same thing. And we've been doing this for close to 40 years between our two law firms. And you say, you take this witness, you do this one, you're presenting on this, you're gonna do the open, Todd, I'm gonna do cross-examine on this witness. And it's accountability, and we go over that before the trial, before the city commission meeting, as to who's actually doing this part of what it is that needs to be done. And if I presented something but Todd's here, I'm gonna go over with him and say, hey, here's what I've prepared, here's what's going on, and here's the background. And if I can be there with Todd, I'll be there and handle that piece of it.
Yeah, the one benefit on that project, I think, is that we can allocate between the two of us different departments, because the last one of those, I handled, I believe it's White Springs. Each department goes over their
Yes.
items, their
Yes. It's a lot of work.
section, and it may be beneficial in order to get the project moving and resolved, is we could allocate the departments and schedule a meeting with the department head, with permission of the manager, and sit down with them and be doing 2 or 3 at the same time, and then put together the end result. I'm assuming you got a consultant that's gonna help write it and put your little notebook together. Okay, that's the way we've done it in the
Yeah.
past. But I think that the key would be to go ahead and get some meetings established with each different department. And that way, if we set the meeting, somebody needs to show up and talk to Scott or I.
Right.
And we'll have the information from the consultant as to what that particular department needs to do and needs to address.
Mayor, I just have 2 more quick little things.
That's fine.
We also have, the manager and I, we meet prior to every agenda meeting. We have agenda prep meetings before we have a council meeting. Fred also attends, he usually attends, if he can't attend in person, he's on the phone with his staff as well. I also have my deputy attend, and then our interim assistant city manager also attends that meeting. We go over everything that's going to potentially be on the agenda, and we fully vet it before, it hits the agenda floor. So would that all go through Danielle as well, or would one of you be on the phone with us to fully talk about items as we go through the agenda process?
Probably would be whoever was attending that meeting.
Okay.
Either Scott or I need to be in on that meeting, because in the past, sometimes when you get thrown a curveball in the meeting, it's hard to develop a response. And sometimes more research is needed, is the appropriate response. So whoever would cover the meeting probably would want to be in on that meeting, so that we're fully aware of potential issues, questions, et cetera, so we're ready for them at the meeting, or ready as for as many as we can be at the meeting.
We do have some things that don't always make it to that agenda, even though we may talk about it at agenda prep. It's still on the draft, but it may not be quite ready yet, so we're still following it with the attorney's office and what have you. So you guys will stay abreast on your end, right? So we won't have to, like, if you come to the agenda prep this time and it's on the agenda prep for next time and he's there, we're not going to have to go all over it again. Okay. And then the last thing that I had was ADA compliance. When you provide documents to your municipal cities for agenda documents, resolutions, ordinances, do you provide them in ADA compliant format? And if not, can you do that?
We got into that, particularly in a couple of our cities, so the answer is yes.
Okay. I think those were all the things I had. I'm sorry to throw so much at you at one time, but we work very closely with the attorney's office and the manager and we are all working really close together.
So do you typically do your agenda prep an hour before the actual meeting? Do you do it?
No, we do it like about a week before. Yeah, it's almost a week and a half before. The agenda tries to go out on Tuesday before a Monday meeting, but we're agenda prepping that meeting the Wednesday before, so it's almost a week and a half before.
And then do you do another prep right before
No.
the meeting?
But if that's something that we feel like would help our process, we are open to
I think,
do whatever we need to do.
as you said, a week and a half out is a good time to start meeting on what's going to be coming up.
We send out a draft to the attorney's office, and then we sit down and talk about the draft that is sent to the attorney's office that we prepare.
And so when that draft comes out, you'll be notified as to which one will be the lead on that particular agenda. And so make it easy on you.
Okay.
You know that this is Todd's month.
I guess whoever answers that phone will be on the,
If Todd has an issue, he'll deal with
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah, we just didn't want to have to explain it to you one week and then get the okay,
Anybody else got any questions?
thank you.
All righty. It'll be a process and we'll get it worked out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Lilker wanted to speak.
Thank you. Still at the Columbia County Observer. I figured they may have answered my questions before I got up here, but they didn't. So I do have a couple of questions. So when both attorneys are here, one from Folds and Walker and one from Robinson, Kennedy and Kendron, and they're both sitting in Fred's chair, I guess side saddle, is the city gonna be double billed? Or if the attorney's billing hours are $190 an hour, if we got two guys sitting there for 4 hours, is that double the billing? Anybody know?
Happy to
Yeah.
field that.
Anyway, yeah.
No, we don't do that, and we don't do it for our other clients in the law firm as well. So we would not do it in that end. Likely, we would split it half and half. Todd's spending time here and I'm spending time here, but we would split that half and half. That's how we would handle that internally. You would not get double billed for the $190 rate. You would get hit twice for that. And we do that very regularly. As I told you earlier, we assign an associate attorney with every case that comes through our door. And we don't double bill our clients. If the associate attorney is sitting there in the conference, then it's reflected on the bill as a courtesy fee reduction. That's how our bills are generated. In our original presentation to you, Todd mentioned that you will get one bill from our two firms. You will get a bill from them and a bill from us. So we're going to generate one bill that will have all of the collected rate, and you will not see double bill.
And there'll be times where you'll see, for instance, going back to your question, if I know I'm covering next month's agenda and I need to be at the previous month's meeting, just to make sure I'm clear on any carryover, then it'll show my attendance, so we can keep track of where we are, but it will not be billed. If that's Scott's meeting, Scott will bill it. If I need to be there to be prepared down the road, then you'll not be billed for my time. And it may be a meeting where I only stay for half of it, but what I need to hear or cover is in the first half of the meeting, then I'll leave. But we'll show, the billing will show the attendance, so everybody keep up where we've been and what we're doing. But those cycles, and we do it the same with trials. Sometimes we don't need to go to a deposition, but only one of us is answering the to ask you questions. And, you know, it's just a benefit to clients.
Thank you. I just have one more thing, Your Honor. I know as Mr. Darby, when I looked at his bills, he didn't do bulk billing. Mr. Cobaline does bulk billing. He prepares for a meeting, he goes for a meeting, he speaks to people, and you get a big bulk slot. Doesn't say how he breaks up the time. He just adds that. Now, I know that there's a lot of legal auditors that don't agree with that system. So I was wondering how the new law firm would handle that. In other words, if they spend an hour preparing for a meeting and then spend 3 hours attending the meeting, if that's billed separately on the billing process. Mr. Cobaline has never done that I can tell. And the second part of that question is, if you read Mr. Cobaline's bills, he very rarely identifies who he speaks with. I spoke with a commissioner, I spoke with a councilman, I spoke with I don't know what they call them at the Lakeshore Hospital Authority, governor's appointee, but he very rarely names who it is. Or if somebody makes a public records request, he says, I researched the public records request, but doesn't say who the requesters are. I researched the requester's request. You know, the problem with that is that to go back and check the billing, you never know who he spoke with. And he may not remember 6 months away or a year away. Sometimes he has trouble remembering things that aren't that far away. So I was just wondering, when you folks bill, if you identify who you speak with and the amount of time you've spent on that particular part of the project. I look at a lot of attorney bills, so I'm just curious. Thank you.
Mayor, can I
It really
ask?
would be worked out with the manager and the city clerk as to how and what format you want.
Mr. Kinnon, are you familiar with Mr. Darby's invoices?
Yes, I work with Mr. Darby and the city work.
And may I ask Mr. Hooker to clarify?
Sure.
Which ones of Mr. Darby's invoices did you review? I looked at 24 months of them, and we mirror those quite consistently. Which ones did you see?
I'm not here to answer your questions, but I don't recall offhand. Thank you.
And who are the legal auditors that, when you said many,
Thank you very much.
non-existent ones?
No, I'm not answering your questions.
Yep.
I'm not here to answer your questions.
It's impossible to answer the question when you don't know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right,
Thank you for your time.
thank you. Count.
But you will.
Pardon me?
You will.
Not you?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we move forward with the contract with Folds Walker and Robinson Kennedy Kindred.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Ms. Secretary, call the roll.
Do we need to identify who's to negotiate that contract?
Mr. Caroline, everything we work with.
Is that okay with that? Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
Yes. Well, welcome aboard, and we look forward to working with you.
Same here. You'll contact us, Mr. Mayor, about setting up a meeting to formalize an agreement?
Yes.
Okay. You can just give my office a call and we'll get it coordinated.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess that concludes that part of this special meeting, unless somebody has something else. So we'll be adjourned till 6 o'clock.